Choyo sampo pagyo trashi pa tuche tempe trinle yarnoda pelge drolor zampe zeparche palde lame shabla solvade Omo a Guru Vajradhara Sumati Munishas Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Oma Guru Vajradhara Sumati Munishas Ane Karm Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajradhara Sumati Munisha Sanekar Uta Vardanya Shri Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajradhara Sumati Munisha Sanek Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Pakyuke Kudan Dagi Lo Pakyuke Sundan Dagi Nga Pakyuke Tukdan Dagi Yerme Chikto Chingelo Makyuke Kudan Dagelo Sundan Dagenga Makyuke Tukdan Dageye Yerme Chikto Chingelo Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Shakya Muni Soha Mahamuni Shakya Muni Soha Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Shakya Muni Soha Sashipuki Choshimeto Tramare Rabalingashin Nidegempad Sange Shintu Mikte Ulvargi Drokunam Dashingla Chopar Shoyidam Guru Ratna Mindrala Kam Niryatayami Sangye Chedan Tsoge Chonam La Chancho Pardo Dani Kyapsuchi Dagi Jinso Gibe Sonam Ki Drola Pinchira Sangye Drupak Sangye Chedan Tsoge Chonam La Chancho Pardo Dani Kyapsuchi Dagi jinso gibe sonam ki drola pinchira sange drupar sho sange chudan tsoge chonam la jancho pardo dani kyapso chi Dagi jinso gibe sonam ki drola pinchira sange drupar sho.
In the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, I take refuge until enlightenment. Through the practice of generosity and the other perfections, may I obtain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings.
Buongiorno.
Hello.
Una delle grandi sfide
One of the greatest challenges that exist in the world, generally speaking, but also refers to the life of each one of us, is being able to communicate well. What I want to say and what you understand are not always the same thing. And this communication doesn't have to do only between me to you and you to me on a personal level, but also has to do, it's also when like a culture it wants to communicate to another, or a religion to another, like Buddhism arriving in the West. And one of our challenges we have is also translating the terms that we have. And I don't know exactly why, or how and why. I've never gone to look deeper, but there are certain words that, in my opinion, shouldn't have been translated, but they were. Better not to translate them, because in our language we don't have that concept. So I translate using a word that means something else. For example, the word merit, which we'll see later on, which has nothing to do with the original word in Tibetan or in Sanskrit, sonam or punya. And then there are other words that would have the right translation, but instead we kept the original Sanskrit. And sometimes this creates a little bit of confusion, because when we use a word, it's like once I was at a conference in Naples, and I was talking about the view of compassion in Buddhism, which is love. I want you to be happy. That's love. I don't want you to suffer. That's compassion. So the attraction for happiness is love, and the aversion for suffering, that's compassion. So if I have compassion for you, doesn't necessarily mean that I suffer for you. And someone's actually raised their hand and said, "No, Lama, you're wrong, because compassion comes from compatire, like sharing passion. So we need to suffer for the suffer of the other." And I said, "I don't know, where the word compassion in Latin comes from. Does it matter? Here we're talking about a concept in Buddhism that we want to share and practice." So compassion translate a little bit, but also not, because it has already the weight of the meaning. So certain words were actually even just kept the original Sanskrit, but actually we've added new meanings that weren't the original ones. And sometimes we get it right, but we also make some confusion. So I am here trying to create clarity And one word that we've kept, kept the Sanskrit word, but the meaning we've changed a little bit would be Buddha. Buddha is a Sanskrit word, but when we say Buddha, we have this, we tend to think, when we say Buddha, are we referring to a state or a being? Actually, it's an inner state of being. It's not a being. And then there are those who have reached that state are called Buddhas, but actually it makes a reference to an inner state that anyone can reach. And that changes everything. And the word that, there's a word that we're going to talk about today that creates a lot of confusion is karma. When the Tibetans decided to translate things, sometimes they created new words. Sometimes they look at Buddhism that arrived in the West, and sometimes we think we're better than the past because we have all this technology. And but when I see the what they did to translate the Sanskrit into Tibet was just amazing. With the king at the time, he sent the most learned among them to India to study, and they created the written Tibetan language, and they had an enormous conference that lasted more than a year, where they published 2 volumes. How to translate from Sanskrit and even how to do a layout. So depending on the layout, you know what kind of text it is. If it's a philosophical text, and also depending on how big the page is, etc. So this kind of knowledge has almost been lost. But among all of this, there was, how do you translate a word that doesn't exist in the original language? And then Buddha was one of those. So because the concept in Tibetan didn't exist. So should they use, they had 3 choices. They could create a new word, they could use the original, or translate it. So they decided to make a new word. So sangye in Tibetan. Sang by itself means to eliminate, and gye means to develop. So sangye means eliminate, develop. So it means he or she, who, that state where all the causes of suffering and mental defilements have been eliminated, and all the qualities have been maximized. And so if we were to say in English, okay, eliminate and develop Shakyamuni, that would sound really strange. So we kept the word Buddha. But actually, karma, the word karma, is one of those words where we could have kept the original word, because we have this word in our language. It's a word that can transmit the meaning well, because karma means action. It's as simple as that. Instead, we've kept the Sanskrit word karma, and little by little over time, we've given it mystic meaning. But if you look at the original word, it didn't have any of that. Of something, something happens and we don't know why. We say, oh, because it's karma. Or something good happens to me. Oh, I've got such good karma. Or something bad happens. It's somebody else's fault. This is our tendency normally. But what happens is, so even if karma literally means action, le gunje is the complete term. Action, cause, and result. The law of action, cause, and result. So we've used this word karma, which is okay, but we've given this word a meaning that's like a mystical meaning. And that so often when we talk about karma, we're making reference to destiny. My karma is my destiny. That's your karma. Oh, how can you need to come to terms with your karma as if it's as if it's destiny. But when we look at karma, it's the answer to it's a fundamental question that often we ask ourselves. Once I was in Brazil, I had gone to see a friend, someone who works in the world of TV, is really quite well known. And one day, doing a program far away with a small plane, he had to go over the Amazon, and he had to have an emergency landing. And as it was going down, there were like just kilometers and kilometers of trees. And that moment where he had that emergency landing, it was like an open field. And he was able to have this emergency landing in a field. So it's not the easiest of landings. At a certain point, there was a little bit of a hill, and so the airplane went up, and then there were all these cows underneath. It was able to skip all of those cows, and then the plane stopped. Someone broke a few ribs, something like that, but nothing so serious. It was my friend with his wife and child and a few other people. Of course, they were rescued, and then he went home. So I went to see him a few days after this accident, and we were there talking, and he was a well-known person, and a lot of people came to talk to him. And he said, Lama, I have a question for you. Many people have come to me and said, you did not die, and your family didn't die because God didn't want it so. It's a miracle. If this had happened 30 seconds before or after, there was nowhere to land. If the cows had been before, if it hadn't been for that little hill, I mean, they're very small things. And they're saying it's a miracle. God didn't want you to die. And he said to me, but Lama, according to the Buddhist view, how would you answer? Why am I here? How is it? I mean, why did this accident happen and it ended like this? And reflecting a little bit, what I believe and what I thought, I said, the reason why you had the accident and you were saved, you and your family, is the same reason. It's the same reason why you take your child to school and you get home safe. Cause, conditions were created. So it's more or less this meaning of this is your karma, but not in the sense of something mystical, in the sense of a very complex equation where there are choices, actions, interactions, my choices, your choices. The problem of that mechanic that didn't do what he was supposed to do, the time that you all left, the child that couldn't travel that week, and so you chose that week, the following week. I mean, just an infinite number of things that brought that moment to be as it was. And one of the errors that we make is that we look for the cause. We ask, why did this happen? And very often in our life, we do the same thing. I'm convinced that for each one of us, there are things that we have experienced, things that are in our life, and we've asked ourselves, why did that happen? And asking that, we tend to look for one cause, the reason, the guilty one. When if you look a little bit more closely, there isn't one reason or one cause or one guilty one. There's an innumerable amount of parts of this whole. It's like in this moment, if we were going to make an equation all together, and each one of us, we choose a number and we choose what if we want to multiply, subtract, divide, etc. So each one thinks of something. Let's say afterwards, um, uh, let's say, we all give our number and the mathematical equation, and there's somebody there on Excel who's putting it together. And so we have this whole equation. At the end, we get to the number 304. I don't like 304. Who's to blame for 304? Who chose the wrong number? I asked myself, why did we get to 304? All of these people here, and we only get to 304, needed to be at least 500. I could point my finger at any one of you. Oh, I chose 75. Oh, okay. If you had chosen at least 200, we would have a different result. But I could say the exact same thing to each and every person here. So who's the guilty one? Everyone and no one. Or everyone and each one. Any one person could have chosen a different number and the result wouldn't have been 304. This shows us that this present moment is the result of a complexity of interactions, causes and conditions. Karma is that interaction. It's that process where every small part interacts one with the other and manifests the present as it is. So when we ask, how is it that this happened, or why did this happen, or why does she have that and I don't, why did this go this way and that go that way, the coherent answer is because causes and conditions made it so. What are the causes and what are the conditions? We can see some of them, but a very complete vision, none of us is able to see it all. And in Buddhist teachings, it said that the most complex thing that exists is being able to have total clarity of the causes and the variance of causes and conditions that create this moment. Because when we look at a condition, it's a result of another it's the result of another equation, and we just go to infinity. It's like, I'm Brazilian. I was born in Brazil, spent many years there. I know the history of Brazil a little bit, and sometimes I look at the social problems, economic problems. There's an economic disparity that's frightening in Brazil now. So it's not just economic, but also cultural. And I ask myself, why is it like this? I can't give a sure reason, but I see the different things that have happened in the past 500 years that are part of that reality. For example, Brazil was one of the last countries of the world to abolish slavery in 1889, just over 100 years ago, and different from Australia, where it was abolished at about the same time. In Australia, they chose to give land to every slave. Okay. All right, you're not a slave anymore. I give you your dignity. Here is some land that you can prepare for your family. What they did is they they slashed the face of every slave so that they would always remember that they were slaves. And they didn't know what to do. So those who couldn't keep slaves, they said, okay, we'll pay you. But they were actually paying them less than what they needed to pay for their room and board. So they were always creating debts towards their ex-owners. And if we go to see, I'm not saying that reality of Brazil is like that, but there's there's a lot of leftovers, let's say, from that history. So we ask ourselves, the choices that were made 200 years ago, for example, do they condition what happens today or not? Totally, they surely do, and it, every moment. If we were to ask ourselves, well, why are we here now? What had to happen so that this moment can be as it is? If we were to ask each person, why are you here? What had to happen that brought you here today? And and how many of those small things, the words said, the thoughts that you had, that if it hadn't been for that, you wouldn't be here today? Are we able to think about something? Okay. When I talk about the story of how Lama Ganchen came to the West always comes to my mind. Because if Lama Ganchen hadn't come to the West, and hadn't gone to Brazil, I wouldn't be here. This center wouldn't exist. He wouldn't have come here to found it. Said once Lama Ganchen, he was in the south of India. This is in the 1970s, more or less, then the mid 1970s, and he had the intention of doing a long meditational retreat. And he created a very, very small, very Spartan a place where there was a very small hill and an artificial lake, because he had a vision where he had a vision where he had to establish himself near a lake where there were five mountains and the woods, and he said, okay, you can never take visions 100%. And so he saw this place, and he thought, okay, it must be here. And so he was preparing for this long retreat, a couple years of meditation. He prepared even, and he really organized everything for this retreat, his provisions, his seat. And then he went to a friend who, again, Lakpala, who was also then later became a teacher of mine. He said, I'm going to do a long retreat of at least 2 years, and I'll be closed in retreat, so we won't be able to see each other. And Ken Lakpala, who was a man of few words, he looked at him and he said, if I were you, I wouldn't be able to recite even 100 mantras in this retreat. And Rinpoche said, why? He said, with all the debts that you have, and you just stay there relaxed and reciting mantras, the people that the people from whom you owe money, they have respect for you, and they don't come to you, they come to me. So what had happened? Lama Ganchen would go to people to do healing ceremonies, and in going to one, so let's say he needed to go somewhere and be somewhere at 10 o'clock, he would leave at like 4, and he would stop little by little the other families, the families that didn't have money, didn't have anything to offer him. Because when you would invite a lama, you needed to have something, but many families, they couldn't even offer him a cup of tea. Instead, lama would pass each family, how are you, what's going on, and then the people would tell him the problems. On the spiritual realm, he'd help them, and then those who had material problems, he would go to those who had more. He would ask for money. He would borrow money, and then he would give that money to the poorer families. So he was also called the Lama of the poor for this reason. So when Gen Lakpala said that, he thought, well, so what happened is, instead of doing a retreat, he changed his idea. He said, okay, I'll accept this invitation that I've received from the king of Sikkim. It was part of India. It was an autonomous region within India, and the mother of the king had problems with her eyes, and the king had invited Lama Ganchen to help her, knowing that he was a healer, a Lama healer. So he said, "Okay, my dear, I'll go to Sikkim. I will do healing practices to the mother of the king, and with the offerings I receive, I will pay all my debts." So he went there. He healed the mother. We have a black and white. We have a black and white photo. Maybe you've seen he has an image, a black and white photo of him holding Avalokiteshvara, this Cherezik who open-eyes Cherezik. But every day there were like 200, 300 people outside his room waiting for him. So the 3 years that he had planned became 3 years. And in the middle of all of this, given that he was near Nepal, a family of friends, actually they was a family of those who were supporters of his previous life. So they prepared a ceremony for him in their showroom of carpets. There was no temple. And that day, a man named Yurgu from Greece came, and he went to Tsetin Gurme, and he said, "I want to come and buy some carpets." And he said, "No, tomorrow's not good because we have a ceremony and the showroom's closed." And he asked, "Well, can I go see the ceremony?" And so he came, he saw Lama Ganchen, and he was floored. He said, "Oh, Lama Ganchen, can you come to Greece?" And Lama Ganchen said, "No. No, oh, please, no, there's so many lamas in the West." He said, please come to Greece. And he said, with one condition, that there are people, there's sick people, people are having trouble, that your people that are not able to help. If I can help them, then yes. So after a couple months, Lama Ganchen was already in Greece. Now let's do a little rewind. So all of that happened. And that brings us to being here today. Well, what if Ken Lakpala hadn't said anything that day? Or what if Lama Ganchen had done that retreat and hadn't accepted that invitation to help the mother of the king of Sikkim? Would we be here today? Probably not. And here I can go on and on. At a certain point, there was Juzi Gardeni, who died a couple years ago, and she had this terrible tumor at her in her liver, and they had given her 3 months, and she went first to Pomaya. It was the very beginning of Lama Tsongkhapa Institute. There was Jampa Gyatso. She went to him, and he said, "No, the only person that can help you is Lama Ganchen, and he's now in Greece." And she went to Greece, and she met him. She could hardly walk, and after a week, she was dancing. He gave her the red and white pills and taught her some mantras. And then she went and lived in Nepal. It was as he told her to do, and she lived for another 25 years. And then she came back to Italy and got sick, not because of Italy, but for her it wasn't good. So, and she is the one who invited Rinpoche Lama Ganchen to Italy. And he was at her house in Bologna for a year. So I asked myself, Juzi got sick. She had this idea. She went to Pomaya. Champa Gyaltso gave her this advice that she followed. Those are all little parts of this equation. And if we entered into the life of each one of you, how complex is this equation? But the most incredible thing is in this extremely complex equation, just one small change changes completely the result. And here, one of the concepts of karma, which is any choice made, any interaction that we have, any word that we say, any thought that we have, it doesn't end in itself. It doesn't end there. And it's not that the choices that we say, the interactions that we have, that they're not important for our future. They are determining. And someone might say, well, Lama, don't say that to me because I feel anxious. I mean, what should I do? What should I not do? But the concept of the law of karma is this. Let's go a little bit more into details now. There's something that's called cause, and there's something else called condition. Let's imagine I take this stick and I throw it. And once I throw the stick and I make this movement, I open up my hand and I throw the stick. The action of throwing the stick ends once I open my hand. And that generates a force, a kind of inertia, that force that makes that stick fly in the air. If I throw it where there's nothing for it to hit, let's say it goes beyond the atmosphere in space, I mean, how long will it fly in the air? It would keep going until it hits something. Here, if I throw it, it meets the atmosphere and then also the force of gravity. And so little by little, it goes towards the center of the earth. But before it gets to the center of earth, if there's someone walking in front and it hits him in the head, what happens? That force that was generated from the action is transmitted, and when it meets someone else, it transmits into the other person. And so here's a concept of physics that translates perfectly. This energy is not created, and you can't destroy it, but it's transformed, it's transferred. So I do something. When I do something, that action, there's an energy that comes together with it that transforms into something else. I made a movement with my arm. That action, that energy was transformed into the force that pushes the stick. At a certain point, it comes into contact with another force, maybe somebody's head, and it transforms into something else. The throwing the stick is the action. But the action, it actually finishes when I open up my hand. The force that's generated from that action is called the force of the action, or we could call the karmic force. In technical jargon, the energy generated from that action. So I have an action, there's a generated energy from that action, and then I have a condition. The condition is something else that comes into contact with that force, that transforms into a new experience called result. So I threw the stick. That force was generated. Someone was walking by, chose to walk by there. These two things met, the result is a headache. So what happens here is the cause is always in the past. If we think about our lives, how many things have we lived days ago, years ago, that still today we're living living the results. They're still conditioning our present and our experiences. Many people had experiences as children and spent years and years in therapy facing that. So what I did in the past is called a cause. The causes can be physical, they can be verbal, or mental. These are the three types of actions that are described. I can interact physically, I can interact verbally, or I can act with a thought. So that generates two things. It generates an imprint, which means the more I do an action, that the easier it is to do that action. The more often I lie, the easier it is. The more I lie, the easier it is to lie. The more I meditate, the easier it is to meditate. It creates an imprint to facilitate the repetition of that action. And that action also creates a force that at a certain point will come into contact with another force called condition. So when I say something, there are actually three things that are happening with my speech, with my action in this present moment. There's what I do in this present moment. I increase a conditioning. I create an imprint. So the more I do something, the easier it is to do that thing. The second thing is I create an interaction on a gross level with someone, because my action it interacts with the world, doesn't end with me. And wherever there's interaction, inevitably there's transformation. So it's impossible for there to be interaction without transformation. So what happens is I say something to you, you hear that sound, you attribute a meaning to that, and that has an effect on you. You know, and also on your side with me. I mean, every interaction brings a transformation. So the action that I do has an effect on on my surroundings, on the people, on the environment, and it creates a chain of events. And at the same time, it also creates a force that sooner or later will give its results. And the analogy that's given is like planting a seed. So I say something. I interact physically with someone. I do whatever it is. I transform myself by solidifying this conditioning. I interact with the world and my surroundings. So I become a condition for something, someone, and I create a cause, an energy, a force that sooner or later will manifest itself. At the same time, that action becomes a condition to ripen other things that I've done in the past. So when we talk about the law of karma, it's like putting together the present, past, and future. In this present moment, the action that I do is a condition to ripen the causes of the past. For example, I meet someone, I tell them something, that person, that experience activates something in me, activates an experience of my past that manifests in my near future. So what I'm living now, what's happening between us in this moment, actually it's activating my past experiences, which means that no one's able to live the present moment independently of one's past. Every moment in this present moment, I mean, this present moment exists conditioned from our past. What I hear, what I see, the choices I make, they don't exist. I mean, it's impossible to do anything in this present moment completely detached from our past. Is that clear? In the past means everything that we've heard, everything we've thought, everything that we've done, everything. Our past is our karma, the action that we've done. But it's not that every moment, everything I've done manifests. Some things yes, some things no. So The present is where I experience the result of my past, but I also create new causes that I'm going to experience in the future.
Perciò
So
il momento presente
this present moment is the sum of three things: the causes of our past. I mean, this is important. Causes are always from the past. I cannot experience something for which I have not created the causes. Sometimes we hear this, oh, I took someone else's karma. I took his karma. Oh, being together, I got his karma. It's just not possible. If it were possible, I'd ask an enlightened being, a Buddha, please take some of my karma, give me some of yours. No, it's not possible. I can't experience anything for which I have not created the causes. What someone else does, the other is a condition. So for our individual experience is the sum of our causes, of our past, the recent past or long time past, added to our state of being at the present moment, our inner state, which is added also to external surroundings, my environment, the people around me. Those are external conditions. So I am influenced by what's around me. Absolutely, yes. But that's a condition that adds up with what I think my psychophysical state in this present moment, which together make me ripen a force that was generated in the past. And so we have this action done in the past together with my inner state, my physical inner state of now, and my surroundings of outer conditions. That's what is always happening. So is it the difference between cause and conditions, is it clear? So when we look at the law of karma, there are four important characteristics, which are the following. I cannot experience something for which I have not created the causes. I've seen situations like this where someone has marvelous condition and is just not able to take advantage of them. It happened to me once. I wanted at all costs to help this lady in India. This lady, she was deaf and dumb, and she had a small daughter. I found a sponsor for her. I found a school for her. I did 14-hour bus ride to find a school. It doesn't matter what I did, I couldn't help her. And this is, so there are conditions, but the person doesn't have the causes. And if that's the case, it just doesn't happen. There are other times where the causes are there and you don't have the conditions. So using an analogy that's not so great, but works. I mean, are we free to buy what we want? Yes or no?
Con tanto che ci siano due cose.
I mean, as long as I have money and that thing is for sale and possibly also legal.
Però in generale quello che succede è che perché io compri qualcosa e venga, io ho i soldi, voglio che mi venda questa e non
But, if we want to buy something, it's not for sale. We're not going to be able to buy it. Or I want to buy that thing. I have the right to buy whatever I want. I'm free, but I don't have any money. You can't have that either. Having money is like having created the causes. And being available and being for sale are like the conditions. You need both of these for it to happen. So I can't experience something for which I haven't created the causes. So I can't experience something for which I have not created the causes. And that shows us also that if you experience something, it means that means that because others have done the causes. No, you yourself have created. This brings us to a question. It's very simply answered in Buddhism, but it's often difficult. That's a question. Once I was at a conference here in Milan, and it was a conference where the main subject was about suffering. They had invited me. I talked about the Buddhist view, about suffering, and before me there was a speaker who spoke like an hour and a half about suffering. I didn't understand anything. I really didn't. I understood the words, but I couldn't understand the whole meaning. And at the end, a lady asked me, "But that's nice what you said, but how can you explain innocent pain?" Actually, the man before, he was talking about that for an hour and a half. Later, they explained that to me. So, that innocent pain, for example, a child born blind, who's to blame for that? Because the question that comes in the context, at least this is what they explained to me, is that within the Christian context, so a child is born blind. Whose fault is it? Is it the fault of the parents or the child? Who's the guilty one? And then there's a whole answer I didn't really understand, or maybe it's the answer. It's not the child's fault, and it's not the parents' fault. And I don't want to put myself in the middle of this this subject. It was just to give you the context of this conference. So, according to Buddhism, it's easy. When a child is born, what he brings with him are the predispositions that he created in the past. That he brings the seeds that he planted. If he had thrown that stick before, maybe it's still going. And it's very similar. It's very similar to the explanation of DNA, because DNA is explained that it works on probability and it's not determining. So there was once a study, an English researcher, and for many, many years she took genetically identical twins. They had the exact same DNA, but for some reason they were separated at birth. And she followed their lives, and she wanted to see how they grew up. I mean, genetically, they're the same, but they grew up in different situations. So it's difficult to say, oh, they're two brothers, but it's similar. No, they were identical. But she explained that DNA has this aspect that's it's not determining. It's not going to tell you exactly what's going to happen, but it gives you a probability. So it's like a potential. And according to what's called epigenetics, my surroundings, and also here in science they talk about external and internal surroundings. So our inner surroundings is more important, our thoughts. According to where I go and who I meet, that's my external surroundings, and my thoughts are my internal surroundings. According to those two, inner and external, I access and activate a part of my DNA, but I can't activate something that I don't have. My DNA transforms as I live my life. We all create new genes. So when someone has a child, actually he's transmitting the DNA to the child, which is also the result of all the experiences they've lived. But I can't experience something. I can't bring out. I can't bring out an experience if I don't have the basis for that. Is this example clear? Similarly, it's explained that when we're born, we bring with us a kind of DNA called predispositions or imprints that we bring in our mental continuum. And it's said that someone who lied a lot has a predisposition for lying. Someone who has meditated a lot is born with a predisposition to meditate, or if someone plays music or hunts, whatever it is. So we bring within us predispositions and seeds, these karmic seeds, karmic force. A child is born with the sickness, not because it comes from nothing. It's the result of the actions that he or she did in the past lives, mixed together with the present conditions, the body inherited from the parents, the surroundings. So we can't experience something for which we have not created the causes. But we also don't have the idea of saying you are the guilty one. No, there are many causes were created, and little by little, depending on the interactions, we activate one or another. Are you following? So I can't experience that which I have not created, the causes. The second rule or characteristic of karma is everything I do. Everything I do sooner or later will give a result. I can, how can I say? I can eliminate that karmic force that I generated. There is that possibility. But if I do something and that seed that I planted is not burnt, sooner or later it's going to sprout and give fruit. The third characteristic of karma is that karma is coherent. The example given is if I plant a seed of lemon trees, can I reap a watermelon? Now, even if I have an enormous field of watermelon, this lemon seed is not going to become a watermelon seed. It's going to stay lemon. So if I plant a lemon seed, I'm going to have lemons as fruit. If I plant an orange seed, it'll be an orange. So there's a coherence between the action and the result. So it's not that linear, like I lied and so someone's lying to me. No. But here we have a very complex question, like what are positive and negative actions? And sometimes it's explained a little bit, how can I say? It can seem a little dogmatic. Oh, you can do this, you can't do that. But when we really look at the original definition of positive and negative actions, when I read it for the first time, I said, okay, thanks. It's not like it explains so much, but actually thinking about it, well, it makes sense. It says any action that when it gives its results, if they are results that are that they bring a positive psychophysical result, then it's a positive action. If the results bring malaise or suffering, then it's a negative action. If it brings a neutral action, if it brings a neutral result, then it's a neutral action. But personally, it's one of the best judges to see if an action is positive or negative is our own body. We can talk about ethics. We can discuss about this. We can talk about this for hours. What's positive, what's negative, what's right, what's wrong. We have the help of great great um, great beings of the path, like Buddha himself too. Like killing is bad and lying is bad, negative. It's a sexual misconduct is next. But when you do something, if you do something with hatred, physically, how do you feel? Do you feel good? No. When, for example, if we feel a moment of gratitude or a feeling of affection and love, what's our body? What's our body like? It's relaxed. So someone who stays for a long time with jealousy and envy and hatred, resentment, then they get sick because science has seen this, and many times we know this. Someone who feels gratitude and love, has anyone ever gotten sick because they've had too much gratitude, too much love? Okay, there's, you get sick of, love mixed with desire. No, I'm talking about that feeling. I care for you. I care about your happiness. How beautiful. Has anyone gotten sick because they loved too much? This I've never heard of. So from this, we see that first thing, that actions done with hatred and resentment and envy and jealousy, etc., what then is harmful to us, those are the same actions that when they give their results, they will be negative results. The actions that are done at the basis, when there's love and gratitude at the basis, when there's generosity and attitude of balance and humility, these things, and when these things are here, they make us feel good, and their results will also bring good. And so this third characteristic is that karma is coherent. The action and result are coherent. It's not like an adding. There's sometimes a strange idea. I even saw it explained in a Buddhist temple. Like, it's not like karma is, I do things and then we add them all up. So you have like the points you get at the supermarket, and then you win some kind of award, or you win the food mixer or the blender. No, it's not about the points that you get and debts that you have. It's very similar to the seeds that we plant, because I can plant many, many sweet seeds, but then I put some things that are bitter. When those bitter seeds will sprout and give fruit, they will be bitter. It's not about adding up and averaging. No, it's accessing one cause or another to one action or another. And when an action manifests its result, it creates a new psychophysical result. And at that point, that experience needs to be lived until it doesn't complete. So sickness is a manifestation of a psychophysical reality of causes created in the past that met conditions, and then it messed it. And same thing for a state of good health. Same thing, a relationship between two people. Causes, conditions are created, they interact at a certain point, and it manifests in a certain way. The fourth characteristic of the karma is a little bit more difficult to digest. It's said that karma grows. When an action, something is done and that action is hidden, like I do something and I pretend that I didn't do it, I don't say it to anyone, the tendency is that inertia that was created, that inertia is going to grow, that increases. On the other hand, if I openly show, if I don't hide that action, then it doesn't grow. Like, let's say I do something positive. One day I was at home. Finally, one day I managed to do something I wanted to do, something related to my practice. I wanted to do it for a long time. Finally, I was able to do it. It went against my laziness. I felt great. That morning, I go for breakfast, and normally I never had breakfast. And I sit down at the table, and somebody's there, and I start, and I said, why do I have to why do I have to say this? And I just be quiet. And so I change the subject, and then, no, I shouldn't say it. And then at a certain point, without even realizing it, I said it. Okay, and then once I started, I'm going to tell you everything about it. What happened? That positive thing that I did, it was transformed into something to nourish my own ego. And when it transforms like that, it becomes an interference for me to really experience it in its purity. So a positive experience, once it stays in that original decisional state, it can has the tendency to grow and create other similar actions. And if I do something, on the other hand, the same way, if I do something negative, if I do something negative and I don't show anyone and I hide it, that also grows. So you can also, when you many small activities can add up, let's say. So it can, maybe I criticize here and there. So it's nothing, just something small, but it adds up, and then it increases the sense of aversion that I have, and it generates this feeling against this person, and then at the end I have this enormous aversion to someone. I don't know where it came from. So here we can see that the actions have grown, they have added up, they have been combined. So when I do something positive and I help a friend, and I help this person, a friend, I love you, and that person, instead of thanking me, looks at me badly, and then I regret. I thought, oh, look, I helped this person and it didn't even help me. So, and I regret having done that positive thing. So I'm regretting that action. That actually diminishes, that weakens the strength of that action, that positive action. And if I do something negative and I regret, that also weakens the force of that action. So I can't experience anything for which I have not created the causes. What I do, unless I eliminate that action through the practices of purification, which means I recognize that the action is negative. I recognize it as an error. So I spoke with aggression based on anger. I see that it didn't go badly. I'm not blaming myself. I don't feel guilty. I don't say I'm bad. But it's just about saying, wow, that was really stupid. I don't want to repeat an action like that again. So when I admit openly that it was a mistake, and I take the commitment to not repeat it, and then based on an opposite feeling. So first I had anger, and now I see that having done that, it was bad for me and the other, and I take the commitment not to do it anymore, and then I do an action like with awareness that's positive in opposition to that negative action that I did. This is to purify. So, for example, I throw a stick and I do something opposite to eliminate that force. If I do something and I don't purify it, or I don't eliminate it, so for example, actions, so any kind of positive action done with love and compassion, that can be eliminated by that can be eliminated by anger. But if I do something and I don't eliminate that force that I created, sooner or later the results will come. The results, I repeat, they're not the sum of all the actions, but they are the fruit of the meeting of cause and condition.
Le cause sono lontane.
The causes are far away. The conditions are here nearby, and the causes are they keep turning and turning because I'm constantly creating new causes. Someone came to me afterwards and said, it was better that I didn't know, because now I feel so guilty. It was better before when I could say, oh, I'm a victim here and there because my father or this, but now I feel bad and it's my fault. No, it's not my fault or your fault, because there is no one to blame. No, it's a complexity of causes and conditions, like the equation we talked about before. So someone speaks to me in a certain way, and I get upset, I suffer. That sensation of suffering that I have wouldn't have been there if that person had spoken to me in a different way. So I am conditioned by what happens. What you do has an effect on me. At the same time, in my past, if I had been different, if in my past I had other experience and I didn't have that wound that has me react badly to a situation like this, I would be different too. So I live I live my present through my past. So there's no one to blame. There's this many parts that add up. And here we need to change our paradigm. This idea that we don't ask anymore, why did this happen? What's the reason? What's the cause? Who's to blame? Because with all sincerity, if someone comes and, well, Lama, why did this happen? I don't know. What do I know? If you want an answer that makes you feel good, I'll give it to you. But if I'm totally sincere, I mean, I can find some things that are connected to what you're feeling, some parts of that equation I can see, and I can show you, and you have access to others. But the question is, what do I do now with the result that I have? So now my answer is 304. What do I do with 304? It's important to look back at our past, to understand and learn, so that we can make a new result. But the question is, with what I have now, what do I do? Where do I go? And this brings a fundamental change, and it's one of the aspects. One begins to practice the Dharma, the spiritual practice, when they start putting into practice the law of karma, which means I stop being the victim. I'm not the victim of others or of myself. I am a very complex cause and conditions that have brought me to be here today as I am, but every part of this equation changes the whole. And here there's a fundamental point, which is
quello che tu fai
what you do towards me influences me, but what I do for to myself has a greater influence. It's like when I asked Ken Lakpala to look astrologically if it was a good day to travel, and he said no. I said, no, please. So you know how to. He was an astrologer. He studied philosophy. He did so many jobs. He said, you can read this. You know astrology. Please, can you look for me because I need to travel to Indonesia? He said, no. And I said, again, please, but explain to me why. After a long yes, no, he said, okay, I tell you why. Have you already purchased your ticket? Yes. Are you ready? I mean, would you change your travel date if it was not a good day to travel? I said, no. And he said, okay. The effect, let's say that I look and it's a bad day to travel. The effect of your mind on what you experience is much stronger than all the stars in the sky. It doesn't mean that there isn't an influence, but what I do and what I think has much greater effect on my life. So yes, we are influenced by what other people do and what other people say, what other people think, but we're all of our surroundings. It made me think of something I said also to these 10, 12-year-olds kids today. I mean, there are many different groups in the summer camp, and we looked at a phrase today, which was, I am me and you are you, but I'm not me if you're not you, and you're not you if I'm not me. I'm me and you are you, but I am not me if you are not you, and you are not you if I am not me. We are mutually interdependent. So what I am in this moment exists independence of all of you here now. When one part in the equation changes, everything changes. But using this analogy of the equation in my individual experience, it's true that what you are, it has an importance, but what I am and what I think has a much greater importance. For example, you say something to me, and the sound comes, and the value that I attribute to it, this makes me, this reminds me of when I was at the monastery of Kuten Lama in the United States, and he brought me to the airport, and we were there having tea before leaving, and he asked me a question, and I thought it was extremely like an insult, very insulting, extremely offensive. And I thought, no, and I didn't answer. And then he repeats the question, and I'm quiet. And and then the third time he repeats the question. And then I was kind enough not to answer, and you keep insisting. And at that point, I need to answer. And then I did something that I had done in the past that was really useful, like pause, rewind. Okay, just a minute. I went to check out my memory of what I heard, and he was mixing English with Tibetan, and I was listening to it as if it were only Tibetan, and he was asking me, do you want milk in your tea? But the same word of milk mixed, I mean, it just sounded really offensive. So what he says is one thing. What I hear depends on me. The value that I attribute to it depends on me. How how many times has it happened to you where you say something and someone comes to you and says, well, you said this. No, I didn't say that. Yes, you said this. So regardless of what you do or what you say, how I experience it, that changes my experience completely. So my choices, my actions determines my experience much more than anything else that's happening around me. So when we talk about putting into practice the law of karma, the law of action, the cause, conditions, and results. I'm not the victim of anyone. I'm the result of a very complex experience of cause and results, but at the same time, every action that I do determines my present and future experience. And if I want to have a certain type of result, I need to create that type of cause. If I want to avoid a certain type of result, I need to avoid that type of cause. To give you a very a simple example, at a certain point, I noticed that eating milk products, my stomach would bloat. And once I thought it was a cake. I once thinking that a cake was lactose free, but it was like only milk, and I had so much pain. But what happens is, so I don't want to have this bloating. I don't want to have stomach pain. And so if I don't want to have that result, I need to avoid the cause, even if I like it. If I want to have a certain type of result, I need to cultivate the causes that bring me that type of result. And here, the law of karma connects with something else. Our ability to dream has to do with observing the future. In Buddhism, we use the term Shilam Dresum, basis, path, and result. The basis, the foundation, the resources that I possess, my body, my mind, my economic resources, everything that I have, everything I can interact with. My future is the result. What can I do with that? Where do I want to get? Where do I want to reach? So if I want to get to a certain point or reach a certain point, I need to go in that direction. So when we talk about the law of karma, I act today knowingly that these actions will bring that result. And if I want to have these types of result, I need if I don't want to suffer, I need to avoid certain actions. If I want to be happy, I need to do certain to do other positive actions. If I want to help my society, is here really the power of every action and the beautiful thing, wonderful thing of karma. Just to conclude, the law of karma is like the law of freedom. You say, if I say, why is this like this? You say, oh, because someone wanted it to be like that. Then, so why would he want something for me that went badly for me, or if I need to depend on someone else? But once I understand that this present moment of my life, in this complex moment, is the result of all past actions, and every interaction has the power of change. If I start acting in a certain way, I will have that type of result. And every action means change, means transformation. It never ends in itself. So once in a while, I see that we live in times where, and I want to be wrong, but I don't think I am. I have this feeling that we live in a time, it has nothing to do with generation, it's not generational, but we see problems and we say, oh, that, this is wrong and that's not going right and this isn't going. And then we go back to our screen, waiting for something to happen, for things to resolve themselves. Is that clear? It's like, as if none of us had the power to change. But so the whole is made up of parts. So every part, if you change a part, you change the whole. If I recognize the power of every small part, I see the enormous power. One experience that was really eye-opening was when was the moment we made the bathrooms here. Those of you who've been to the bathroom, you've noticed that there aren't bathrooms for men and women. And I was working on the project together with the architect, changed a bunch of things. It's a wonderful one, he was a wonderful architect who accepted, my changes. And we had one little problem. I didn't want to put bathrooms above the temple. I put them on the side. But where I put the bathrooms, we couldn't have two rooms in front of the bathrooms, which is a law here in Italy. So it has a public space. You need two. You have two. We needed two spaces, one for each bathroom. But so, and then in one city office, she said, you're out of category, so I can't. So anyway, so it was a very practical point. I mean, then I thought, do we really need, do we need to have men's bathroom and women's bathroom? So one floor is for men, another floor is for women, and then so we can even change it weekly. But anyway, it stayed like this. I tried to make a comfortable bathroom. So I don't like these bathrooms where you have the stall that's open below and so you have these nice doors, and there's aeration. So there's anyway, just to say, lots and lots of love was put into designing these bathrooms, but I just left one space before the bathroom. And one day I received a message from Google Maps. It was in English, and it asked information about our activity here at the temple. And there was a questionnaire, and there was the question, do you have gender-neutral bathrooms? Do you have gender-neutral bathrooms? I said, yes, we're modern. And there I understood something. I didn't do it with that in mind. I just want a clean and comfortable bathroom. But what happens is, what was seen just a short time ago as something negative, mixed bathrooms of men and women together, today, not by everyone, but by most, is something positive. Why? Because we live inside a culture. We're in Italy. We're in this Italian culture, and the culture is made up of the way we eat, the way we speak, the way we relate with the authorities. But there is no Italian culture that's individual. that's independent of everyone's, independent of each person. So my way of doing all these things, and we grow up in a similar situation. We have one context, but once I change my way of thinking about the bathrooms, I'm one. But when I speak to another one and they change their way of thinking, little by little, we change the general culture. And if we can change how we look at bathrooms, we can change so many things. So the hope doesn't end there with the bathrooms, but our hope is that our thoughts, when we change our world view, without talking about our physical actions and what we do with the world, which obviously does a lot, but just our thoughts. Our thoughts make a change in the culture in which we live. And what the world needs more than ever is a change of paradigm, a change of the storyline, how the story of what we tell ourselves. And among all the actions, Buddha said that the most powerful are the actions of mind, our thoughts, our emotions. They are among the most powerful things in the universe. Our thoughts, they direct our speech, that direct our actions. So in practice, what does that mean? We stop victimizing ourselves. And I give power to myself. I see how every action it determines what I do, and I try to act as coherently as possible. I try to be today as coherent as possible what I want to be in the future. I try to live today in coherence with what I want to be in the future. So little by little, I can build and be that. If we can really reflect deeply and bring our life, this law of karma, bring the law of karma to our lives, it changed so much anger and hatred wouldn't have any basis to support itself. So I ask you to reflect on this. Think if it makes sense to you or not. If it makes sense, think about it, reflect on it, observe, and little by little, see how it changes your life. Whether you think you're a Buddhist or not, karma is not for Buddhists only. It's part of reality. Actions bring results, the full stop. And Buddha explained why. He also explained what the greatest force that exists in the world is this force of interaction. And at the basis of all these interactions, there's our mind, which changes the direction, changes everything. That's the only thing I ask you is try to reflect on this. Does it make sense to you or not? No, okay, I'm Buddhist. I need to follow the law of cause and effect. It's not because you think you're Buddhist that you have to follow this. No, is it coherent? Does it make sense? Then we follow. It's not that it's not like you have the choice of following it or not, but it's a question of following it with awareness and so we choose to be part of the solution. We see that there's hope in the world, and I see how my actions determine how much they determine a change in the future. I don't know if Kilakpala was aware of the change he made. I don't think so. But everything we do, a thought that we've had, it brings another kind of result.
Quando noi guardiamo con attenzione
When we look at the law of karma,
arrivare dove vogliamo.
we really see how possible it is to get where we want to get. So now it's time for us to say our final dedications.
Lame kutse rapten chi namkar tinle chokchur gepa dan losan tempe drume sasumgi drove munsel takto ne gyur chi nimo dele tsendele nime kuyan delek shi ninsen takto delekpe koncho sumki chingi lob koncho sumki ngodrubutsol Kuncho sumke trashisho.
At dawn or at dusk, at night or midday, may the three jewels grant us their blessings. May they help us to obtain all realizations and sprinkle the path of our lives with various signs of auspiciousness.
Grazie a tutti.
Thank you, everyone.
Ci vediamo settimana prossima.
We'll see each other next week. Next week it begins this week Dharma and Nature. If you'd like to say a quick hello, you're welcome.